Hi, everyone. It's Ken Rakowski, Sandy Grigsby, and this is, well, the Sandy and Ken Hour, where we talk about different topics that are important for you to go after when it comes to relationships with yourself, with your significant other, and people around you. And every week we dive into topics that sometimes might be uncomfortable for others, are fun for many, but we are going after those points and we want your insight and your ideas along with that. Last week was a very intense topic, and that was all around relationships. And different relationships, because we found out that Sandy, I learned this a long time ago, she is half black, half white.
Surprise!
She lives in both dualities all the time. And because of that, that really brought up a lot of deep conversation regarding how you tackled your childhood and fitting in and understanding what it takes to fit in and not fit in, and why fitting in necessarily isn't important.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true.
But still having your own group is important.
Yes.
Your own hang. Today we're going to talk about a topic that's all around the idea of when you have something that might be sensitive to discuss with someone, how do you do that? What's the steps? Because it's different for guys and for girls, for kids obviously too. And we want to hear about your stories, the ones that you're going through when it comes to telling or talking about something sensitive to somebody, either your significant other or someone you have your relationship with. But before we go there, how are you doing with everything that's going on in the world right now?
There's a lot. I can feel the tensions rising. I feel it from other people. I feel it in myself. But it's a matter of just taking time to ground yourself and reset yourself and make sure you're looking at the broader picture instead of the narrow focus.
Okay. But I notice I get too caught up into this, where I'm watching the news and I'm getting like irritated.
You start sweating.
I get irritated because the stories are different with every network. It's almost like, here's the story. All right, one network, they admit certain facts, another one admits other facts, and whoever's watching one network solely, they don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it drives me crazy.
It's really bad, the way that the media is skewing information on all sides.
Yeah. So I guess I get emotionally charged, not just about what's going on, but the misinformation of what's happening.
That's exactly right.
Right? And that's...
So what I tell people is, before you just take something for granted from what you're hearing in the media, on social media and the news, do the work and study it up, look into it, find the sources that they're referencing, and make sure that you understand them and that they make sense. So regarding this whole movement that's happening right now, I took a point to read The New Jim Crow. It's such a long book, I'm not even done with it, but I've learned so much about Black history. It's mind-boggling. So now for me to speak to someone who's saying one thing on any side, any party, it doesn't matter, I can actually argue it with actual history and facts. So I can see both sides and I can come to a really good argument, as opposed to just emotion and just throwing information out because you get all excited about something.
And also the documentary, it's on Netflix, it's called 13th, which is all about the 13th Amendment, which is incredible. And it really does show, again, history and facts. This is not emotional. And we really want to stress that when we look at anything, as long as you could discuss it with real facts, with real historical data, then you present it. If someone's emotional about it, you can't change that. They're not going to get off of whatever they're on, whatever platform. But historical and facts really make you know that you know what's going on.
Exactly. And it just feels so much better knowing what you know when you know what's going on.
But today's topic does deal with some emotion.
Yes.
Because when you have that dialogue with somebody, at times it's going to be emotionally charged. Let me just tell you a personal story that's going on here. We have an 18-year-old, soon to be a 19-year-old living with us, my son. Insanely intelligent, would be more on that border of on the spectrum.
Yes.
Incredibly talented, but in his own mind, which all teenagers are like this, he thinks he's right.
Which I remember being like that.
I think we all were like that.
Right.
Every one of
Dad,
us.
Shut up, because I'm right.
So the trial and tribulation with a teenager is, how do you speak their language to where they understand it? Now, we've talked about speaking languages before, and I'm not talking about if you're speaking Urdu or Spanish or Korean. I'm talking about the language that connects. Like, for example, social media has a language. Certain people are more...
Urdu?
I made it up, okay? It's a cool language.
I thought so.
Could be a Klingon if you want, okay? But the whole idea...
I've heard of Nerdway, but not Erdway.
Yeah, it's nerd way. But the whole idea is when you're speaking to somebody, their language, they connect. For example, if you want to get a hold of a teenager today, the way to get a hold of them is on social platforms and on text messaging. DM is their first line of acceptance. If they get it on a DM, they look at it, they review it. If you email a teenager, forget it. It's like going out into space. Teenagers communicate differently. Alex, what's your best communication platform? If somebody wants to get a hold of you, Alex, and connect with you, what's the best platform for you?
I would say 90% of my conversations are on WhatsApp because people internationally like it. People who are security paranoid want Signal. People in the Middle East where WhatsApp is banned want to use TuTalk.
Or Bitin.
Or Botim. Yeah.
Yeah, Botin's a really big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So understanding that platform, that's your platform that you prefer. If someone sends you an email, does that set high, or is it WhatsApp first?
Well, I would have to say that the easiest way, and the way that most people contact me if it's not a spoken communication or they want video, is through Facebook Messenger. I get probably between 20 and 100 Facebook Messenger things a day, and probably 3/4 of them are people just wanting to send me a link and wanting me to know this.
But understand what I'm asking. I think you may have misunderstood.
Okay.
If I'm trying to talk to Alex Lightman and I want to be top of mind,
Facebook Messenger.
Facebook Messenger's for you. Got it. For me, it's face-to-face, meaning go on a hike. Don't text me, don't email me, don't even call me. Somehow see me, and I call it F2F, face-to-face. If that doesn't work, it's FaceTime. FaceTime, and then email's way down here on the bottom. So for you, it's Facebook Messenger.
No, I mean, now that you say this, I love face-to-face, and I've been so happy that the restaurants are open in Santa Monica. I sat in a restaurant and I had a meal. Went to Hillstone last night, and I was so happy to have my normal life back again.
Yeah, it's true. So face-to-face, what's yours? If someone needs to get a hold of you and really speak your language, connect with you, what is that platform?
Text message to phone.
Text
so
to phone.
I like getting someone to text me saying, hey, Sandy, I'm going to call you. Do you have a moment? Not just call me when I'm in the middle of something. Because then I can say, yes, I'll be available at this time. So I love text messages first, and then I love to speak one-on-one.
Got it. Dr. Mark Goulston, what is your platform, or let's call it your connection of choice? If someone wants to get a hold of you and really get your attention, what is the best way to do that for you, Mark?
I'm crossing over to WhatsApp.
Really? WhatsApp is the top of mind place for you now, is WhatsApp.
Yeah, it just, for some reason or other, I resisted text. Probably I'm rebelling against my kids. So I bypassed text to go to WhatsApp.
So if somebody wants Mark, top of mind right now, WhatsApp's for you.
Well, no, I like that. No, I'll read text. I still do email. I'm a dinosaur. You know, I'm kind of half past dead, so I still like email.
You like email. Email's it. Let's try, Joette, what's the best platform for you? Or again, is it face-to-face? Is it a letter? Is it an email? What works for you?
I'm like Sandy with the text message and the call. I love face-to-face because I'm a very visual person, touchy-feely, huggy-kissy. But for the most part, yes, text and call.
Got it. And how about you, Christopher?
Yeah, I'm more like Sandy. I'm text, hey, I'm going to call you in 5 minutes. Hey, not really, call me in 20 minutes. I'll be able to give you my 100% time.
That's it.
Yeah, I like that method better. And I kind of gravitate between that with WhatsApp because that's where China seems to gravitate to.
That seems what gravitates to? China?
Yeah, they kind of, I talk to them more
got
on
it.
WhatsApp than any other thing.
Actually,
then,
WeChat's bigger for them than anything else. WeChat.
Yeah, when I'm talking to China, it's always WeChat. Yeah. I have probably more messages from WeChat than everything combined.
Yep.
Many of them are people talking to me in Chinese. I have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah, it's definitely WeChat. No,
I misspoke. It actually is WeChat, but anything official, anything that's going to the bank or my attorney has to see it, then I need you to email me. Okay.
Yeah, email. Or fax. Fax me. What? Michael, what's your best form of communication?
Best to get my attention is text. But if I really want to connect, of course, FaceTime works great. And yeah, getting together in person is ideal. But I think in today's world, I'd take a FaceTime in the moment any day of the week.
So Ralph Simon, who's kind of like my mentor, Ralph Simon sends me a handwritten letter once a week from somewhere in the world. Handwritten. And he puts, get this, newspaper clippings from wherever he's at for me to read. This is top of mind. And if I want to get Ralph's attention, if I send him a letter, it's game over. He frames that. That's important.
That's because the last time you sent him a letter was like 20 years ago.
It was like a year ago. But his top line of communication is a letter, and he remembers everything in that letter. It's just interesting, right? So we go old school, new school. Hey, Jason, we're asking, what if someone needs to get a hold of you, Jason, what is the best communication platform? It could be old school letter, telephone call, FaceTime, a text message, WhatsApp. What works best for you, Jason?
The bat sign in the sky. But if you don't have one, text probably works best. Texting.
Text. Okay. Text is it. Who's this?
Talani?
Talani. Love to see Talani.
Yes, that's how you say it. Hi.
Hi, can we see you, please?
Yeah, I just wanted to transition to my computer. If you give me 1 second.
All right.
I'm here.
We open up Tuesdays for everybody on Tuesdays. So this dialogue is friends. It's people that you might want to invite in. So this is a good hanging place for everyone. Okay, that's what this is. And while we're waiting for Talani, how about you, Joseph? Best way for you to communicate? There's
So anyone can just, if they just join, like I don't have to tell you their names ahead of time or anything.
Yeah, just as long as they don't share that link, because we don't want to get Zoom bombed.
Yeah, no Zoom bombing. So just
Yeah.
someone you
Okay.
know.
Yes.
Yeah, one person.
Yes.
Thanks.
Joseph?
Yeah, it's got to be face to face. Somebody's got to get my attention. They're taking my time. I'm giving my time, and I don't like to be interrupted too much. So it's be in my presence. Otherwise, give me a call.
So just a plain old telephone.
Yeah.
Plain old telephone. This is important, everyone. We need to know the communication platforms, especially when we're going to tell somebody something that might be uncomfortable. We need to know what their first line of communication connection is. How about you, Ron, up in Malibu?
Without a doubt, it's face-to-face when possible, but my second choice is certainly Zoom. If it's a newer relationship, I had 2 of them reach out to me today as introductions. I will absolutely say, let's get on a Zoom together, because it's second best without a doubt. But I'll make another point. I made a conscious decision many years ago. I've never been on any social media, and I'm not on it now. So the apps you're talking about, WhatsApp and all that, certainly for overseas people, but I'm glad of that decision now. And I know I'm probably missing out on some things, but I don't want to react all day long. I would like to be proactive.
Sure.
And from what I see with the people around me, they become very reactive to all of the communications coming in from even LinkedIn and Facebook, and of all of them, LinkedIn is the one I somewhat think I should be on. But all the others I think are just noise, and the time wasted doesn't equal the benefit. I could be very wrong.
No, I like LinkedIn also. The only problem with LinkedIn is when it's your birthday, you get 7 trillion happy birthdays, and it takes forever to get through those. I'm still going through those, and that was a month and a half ago.
At least they're thinking of you.
Yeah, well, I think it's a little tool that pops up. Hey, it's Ken's birthday. Say hi, and it's just like a button you press. Mike Brown, what's your platform of choice? What's your best communication way?
I would say carrier pigeon.
Okay.
Smoke signals.
Come on, buddy. What's really going to work?
Actually, for me, text and phone.
Text and phone call.
And also, really, in person is the best.
Yep, face to face. Again, some people don't like that. They don't want face to face. I'm with you. I like face to face. Jack in Kansas. Come on, buddy. Unmute yourself. Jack, I want to hear from you. By the way, many people need to know, Jack literally has created much of what the internet is today. This
Well,
guy is a big freaking deal when it comes to technology. So when we say communication, he's seen it all.
that just means I'm old.
Yeah, right. So Jack, what is your preferred communication connection point?
I like Zoom, but I like it in small groups of 3 to 5.
Small groups of 3, but if somebody needs to connect with you and tell you something that might be challenging or really important, is it a letter that's
Email
sent to
me.
you?
If it takes more than 3 sentences, they should email me.
It's
And
an
then
email.
then we can do the face-to-face.
Got it. Now let's go with
Talani.
Talani, your best. Hi. What works for you?
Yeah, so no longer text. I actually have phone anxiety. So I did social distancing for my phone back in February. So yeah, believe it or not, I can go a long time without my phone. But email and then actually a Zoom.
Wow. Phone social distancing before social distancing was even a thing.
Yeah.
Why were you so proactive?
Because I think when people have your number, they start to abuse it and they think you should respond immediately. And I would get too many texts. They were all relevant, but at the same time, you start getting distracted from your actual work. So I'm very mindful of when I'm on my phone, including like social media.
So, but a phone call for you now is important then.
Yeah, well, also it's faster. I hate when people go back and forth on text or emails. It takes too much
That's my
time.
pet peeve, that long, forever explanation. So just call me and tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate this. That's just me. Alan, you're the last one that's on here. Best platform for you, buddy. What is it? First, you got to unmute yourself, so it's obviously not Zoom.
They're fucked at the moment. I mean, I'm in the midst of changing modem.
Anything with broadband is not your communication platform.
Yeah, so we're going to go with handwritten letter for him.
Yeah, and carrier pigeon, going with Mike Brown said. Okay, we're going to work on his connection. Okay, so let's dive in this. It's really great to have Mark with us because Mark has even written books on this whole thing. Okay, and let me just say what the topic is, and let's get your stories. And I have some things that I put together. And the topic it is having a difficult conversation with your partner. Having a difficult conversation with your partner. Now, you're really good at diffusing when it becomes difficult, I've noticed. When people get irate and they go nuts or whatever, you go, all right, you create a whole let's be still and let's have that dialogue. But when you have to have that, think about an old boyfriend, not me.
Well, you're not an old boyfriend.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm still here and I hope to stay around for a long time. Let's just think about that old boyfriend, and you need to have that conversation about you don't want to see each other anymore. Is that a phone call? Is that a text? Is that a face-to-face? Is that just a letter?
It's been both, depending on where old boyfriend lives, but I think it's best face-to-face.
Face-to-face. So
it's the hardest, but I think that's the best.
I want you to think about that significant other, and you need to have that conversation, whatever it is. They're maybe getting out of shape, and it's time for them to start going to the gym, if it ever opens. Or maybe they're using terms that you find offensive. That's from their family they may have used. Or you find certain things they do that really affect the relationship. What do? First, you need to know their communication platform, especially if they're remote. So if they're not sitting next to you and they're somewhere else, and that's why I asked all of you, what is your communication platform? What do you use? If you want to talk to me, FaceTime me. You really, if we can't be on a hike together or walking next to each other, FaceTime me. Don't call me on the phone. I got ADD. I'm going to be working on everything else.
Yeah, if you're on the phone with Ken, he'll be saying yes, but he'll be doing like 12
Yeah, I'm doing something else. FaceTime, we see each other. We're in that dialogue with one another. You got my attention. And by the way, I FaceTime everyone. You notice that.
Yeah.
Right, Kelly? I mean, Kelly, are you a FaceTime guy? If you have to say something really important to your kids, they're not with you, are you FaceTiming with them? What do you do, Kelly, to connect with your kids? Unmute yourself, guys. Come on, we've been doing the Zoom thing for a long time. We should know the rules.
I'm sorry. We use something like that, FaceTime, Skype, whatever. Depends on where they are. Yeah. Of course, they're leaving in a month to go to college, so it's going to be.
Well, you'll never hear from them again until they graduate. Until they need money.
Until they need money.
That's true.
Yeah. Or they need their laundry done.
I just ordered the copy of the credit card for them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You're doomed.
No. You put a $200 or $300 limit on it per month.
And you got to keep putting money into it and the money into it. Yeah.
No,
Good luck with that.
This is the one for the emergencies.
Oh, that's the backup one. Okay.
Yeah.
We just talked about platforms for communication. Next is time for communication. What is the best time to talk? Christopher, you've been a married man for a long time. If you want to discuss something with your wife, Mr. Cooper, what time do you talk to your wife?
It's right after I bought that brand new Harley. Yeah, wheel it up in the driveway. Hey, look, honey, look what I bought. That's when I talk. Yeah,
that's a
generally
thing.
No, I start the conversation. I start the conversation with us daily. I tend to start it off with, how her day's been going, how was your work. If she's off, then she's usually on her bike. I ask her how far she went, and that starts a whole discussion because that's a quantitative question. How far did you go? She'll tell me I went to such and such a city. And I go, that doesn't tell me anything. That doesn't tell me how far you went. So, but anyway, I start the conversation out, and then we go from there. There's a 10-year difference between us. So, she's kind of a 60s child. But yeah, I started out, and I generally start out with a pretty broad scope question, and then I listen to her carefully, and I dissect what's on her mind, and then I respond back to the question that she asked in kind.
But
So
there's no time of day for her? It's any time?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's usually when I get home from work, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah,
oh, okay.
I'm finishing my shift. They come back. Like this morning, I got home around 7. How you doing? How's your day? She's working from home now, so she'll immediately tell me I have a meeting at 10, and so I got her from 7 to 9:30.
So I don't know if you know this, because I'm going to guess you. Do you know what the best time for me is to have that dialogue?
Early in the morning, for sure.
It is, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm a morning person.
He wakes up and goes, let's have a deep conversation right now. I'm like, huh?
I have been pondering so much while I've been laying down. I got so much to talk about.
And he goes, I've been awake for the past 3 hours waiting for you to stir. I'm like,
I am like that dog that's like looking at her like, okay, are you going to wake up? Are you going to wake up? Are you going to wake up? Oh, she's up. Yeah. It's horrible. Best time for you? One-ish right after you got your morning stuff done.
Yeah, that's true.
Ken, you've gotten much funnier in the years. Maybe it's Sandy or you, but you're much funnier than you used to.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks, Alex.
It's working. My funny training is working.
TULAN,
Ken, for the record, you didn't give a time.
Oh, for her, it's 1 o'clock.
What about you?
For him, it's in the morning, anytime in the morning.
Whenever she wakes up.
Between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m.
Wow. Wow.
That's the time. And then I use it for the rest of the day. It's like, all right, I'm going to go after, but this is important, guys. If you are going to have that dialogue with somebody, know their time, not your time. Do you agree with that, Mark?
Totally. You really got to, what we're covering is so important because everybody has a preferred time. They have a preferred way to approach them. In fact, something I want to mention that can really save a lot of things, but you have to use the Ken Rutkowski tone, which is the playful tone. Hey, it's kind of like a playful puppy dog. Like, hey, but what you say to someone is you can say, when you do this when you're going for a walk, say, hey, going forward, when and if I have an issue with you, what's the best way to bring it up? So I learned that from Marshall Goldsmith. He's a big executive coach. He says, focus on the future that nobody's screwed up yet. Because if you focus on the past, it's he said, she said, whatever. But if you can say, hey, going forward, if I run into an issue, and it's bugging me, what's the best way to bring it up to?
Got it.
And then when they tell you it, you will avoid conflict 50% less of the time because you'll have a way to bring it up. And then when it's time to bring it up, you can say, hey, remember that conversation we had about the way to bring things up? I think I'm going to use it now. I think I'm going to use that card right now. And I think you told me the best way to bring it up was such and such. And then you just close. You just go into it.
Who gave you that quote? That's a great quote.
Marshall Goldsmith is the top executive coach in the world. You just have to ask him. And he said he has something called feed forward coaching. And he says, focus on the future that nobody's messed up yet. And so you say going forward, and this is a good way, by the way, if you're managing people, you say going forward in the event that I see that we're running into an issue and you're kind of off track and I have no desire to punish you or shame you, what's the best way to bring up something so we can get it handled? And so it hasn't happened yet. And then when it happens, you can bring it up and say, remember that conversation we have? So that gives them the chance to steel themselves for the criticism and say, I got one of those issues, and then you just lay it out.
Now, do you guys know your time, Stefani? Do you know what your best time is? If somebody needs to have a serious conversation with you, what's the best time?
I'm pretty open during the day. I'm like you. I wake up with a lot of energy. But for others, I think it's always in the afternoon is, I think, a safe spot. Maybe after like they ate lunch.
Hi, Eddie. Eddie, is that your name? Hi, Eddie. Eddie, what is your best time? If somebody has to have a serious conversation with you, what is your best time for them to, where you're the most receptive?
I would say pretty much any time. I mean, if somebody needs me, then I'll psych myself up to be there.
Yeah, but if they want to get a hold of you, so if it's really serious, do you really want it right before you go to bed? Do you want to hear that?
I think it's totally fine. I think it's more about like if they really need me while I'm about to go to sleep, then I'll make myself available.
Okay. Alex is smiling. Why are you smiling so much there, Alex?
I'm smiling because she really loves your events and likes you, and she was dying to be part of it. So she's looked over my shoulder at the metal breakfast, and that she got on so fast after I sent the invitation. That's why I'm smiling.
Well,
that's why I was trying to set myself up just now.
Well, it's great to have you here, okay? But we're talking to this whole process of, and again, the topic is if you have to really start having a serious conversation with somebody, and this is happening now, come on, divorces are up. I just talked to a friend of mine who's a divorce attorney. He says he's never seen so many filings for divorces than he has right now. It's his bumper.
From the lockdown?
What's that? No, it's up.
From the lockdown.
Yeah, from the lockdown.
Is that people didn't really like each other and they were able to avoid each other, but now they couldn't? Is that the deal?
I think right now everything's opening up and they're trying to figure a way to get the hell out and take as much as they can.
But children enjoying their parents is an all-time high.
Yeah.
We hear it over and over. Everyone's like, my kids are so happy. They love it. They want to spend more time with us. They don't want us to leave. And the kids are going, stay here, stay here.
Yeah. Same thing with pets. Pets like, yeah. Okay, here's the next thing. Since we've talked about platform, best way to connect with somebody, and then what is the best time, two things. Always remember that, because I know you do not want to hear something right before you go to bed.
Oh, no.
No, not at all. I don't want to do that. Next is what Christopher just said. Start with something positive. You start on that high note. You don't just go in there going, oh, I got to talk to you about how much of an asshole you are. No, don't do it like that. Don't start like that. You step back and you start. And Chris, what you just did is you said, hey, how far'd you ride? And almost start to at least bring it to a positive point, right?
But it's also starting off any conversation on a positive note. When someone comes up to me and goes, I have really bad news for you.
I do this as teasing.
Yeah,
you.
and
but
you're
I tease
like,
you with this.
But people do this. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying people do this. And you're like, what? And then they'll say, your favorite restaurant is closed. All restaurants are closed. Like, I have great news for you. What? We get to try something new.
Yeah, you do. You do try. I like that, but I do. And it's not like you want good news or bad news. No, don't do that. Don't ever do that. Let's just first start with something positive. But remember, the next point is, what really is the problem at hand? Don't just go off forever and eventually get this. Like, come on, what's the issue? You know,
cut to the chase.
Get to the chase, but what really is that problem? Really. And Mark, I've seen you do this with people a lot, is you go right to it. Let's start talking. And then you start working around that once you're there. You got to get to the tender area, right, Mark?
Yeah, because the suspense will kill the other people. They'll say, what is it already? And although I got to give you a quick hack that will stop any argument and flip it in one sentence. So anybody want to hear that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
So the key is, you know how sometimes you escalate, and so you're all reactive. So if you can pause at any time when, instead of reloading, you say to you just ask yourself, what's it like for the other person right now? If you can be curious of what's it like, you can't be curious and furious at the same time. I did that with my wife some years ago. We were going tit for tat, and then I said to her, what's it like for her? What's it like for her right now? And I said, you don't like where this is going any more than I do you? She says, no, I can't stand it when this happens. I said, you have any advice how we can turn it around and make it not go there? And she paused, she smiled, she says, no, but you're doing good.
Like that.
What happens, and I need some advice here because us guys are a little different than the women. I notice that there's a fight and flight thing that happens with me and with you. And it's different. You have a tendency to almost stand still and process.
Mm-hmm.
I need to move around, okay? And it's not like I'm trying to leave. I'm trying to, you process differently, I process differently. I don't know, Jack, when you get into a tit for tat for your wife, and your wife is a very analytical woman, let's face it, is there a fight and flight? Does she like get angry and leave, or is she right in your face? What happens with you, Jack?
She thinks I'm yelling.
She says you're yelling.
I'm yelling. If I have any issues, it sounds like I'm yelling at her, and she's saying, "Why are you yelling at me?"
But are you yelling?
How could I tell?
And that's actually a good point, because
Yes.
You can tell by recording yourself.
No, don't do that.
No, actually, sometimes it's just the tone that you're using, and you don't realize that the tone might be a trigger for her in her past experience of the way people spoke to her in a condescending or diminutive way. So in her mind, you're yelling, even if your voice hasn't gone up or you don't feel like you're yelling, but in her mind you are. So if she says you're yelling, the best thing to do is just respect that that's how it sounds to her. And Ken's phone is really annoying.
It's a manual. It's a manual.
And to just
we're in the middle of something, manual.
Make note of that. And then the next time, just either slow down your pace or just speak in an even lower tone.
You know, in this family, everybody works 18 hours a day and 90 miles an hour, and any communication is an interruption of flow.
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah, but I also do
sound like yelling. I mean, it's an interruption.
Yeah, but Jack, I think because of our at times being so dominant, we're not yelling, we're being forceful. And forceful could be interpreted as yelling. And I think that's the dominant side of our alpha coming out.
No,
and we want to, no, you're saying no? Oh.
I'm very rational, and she's, in her social interactions, is very friendly and sort of bubbly, and I'm come out of my analytic fog, and the very first sentence out of my mouth sounds like, you know, here's the points, 1, 2, 3, and you should add in these 2 more, and then we should discuss it, and that's how it must sound to her. That I'm not bouncing around. I'm just saying, let's get to it, and it's my fault, I guess, because I don't have that bubbly side.
I think like I said, it might be more triggers for her than it is your fault, because to anyone else listening, they might think that you're not yelling at all, but to her, it's triggering her. So at some point in her history, someone spoke to her in that way, in a way that was threatening. So she perceives it as yelling. And I understand that because it's happened to me. I actually had a father that used to yell, and he used to yell in a very strong, powerful way. And he wasn't actually shouting in the stereotypical way of like, someone's yelling at you. Like he would just go, you know, you have to do it like this. And he would just keep going, and it was so strong, and he was very even paced. But to me, I knew it represented yelling because he was mad and he was coming at me in a certain way. So if Ken does anything in that similar tone,
you regress.
I regress back to the trauma of my dad yelling at me, yelling in my mind of what I determined to be yelling. And so it came across as yelling. So I actually will say to him, stop yelling at me. And he'll go, I'm not yelling at all, but it's a trigger for me. So if you're just aware that it might be a trigger for her and just be mindful of that.
What I'm aware is that what Mark said in the beginning.
Yes.
You have to set it up. If you have a point to make, you got to set it up so that you let them know when's coming, a day or an hour or whatever. And then when you actually get to it, when you get to the conversation, you refer back to the thing that said, I was going to talk to you about something, is now a good time, to give them some running room. And I never do that.
No.
Yeah, I have another.
Wait, real quick, Tavani, what are you saying? I'd like you to comment on what you're saying inside the chat.
Which one? Sorry, I text a lot on here. Which part? About the female?
No, you were talking about
About it being emotional for females.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you mentioned how it comes off being like an alpha if you're a male, and then normally when it's a female, it's like, oh, we're emotional. And if we go too yell, then we become a female dog. Like if we yell and become too aggressive, now we're a female dog. And it's just unfortunate that we have these labels tied to our genders.
Yeah, it's true.
So how do we fix that? How do we fix
That's
that?
$1 million question.
It is.
But Sandy, it's funny when you said that. I have a similar thing. My parents used to fight a lot. And I remember as a kid, I'm in my bedroom and the door closed and I hear them in the hallway or someone just yelling and screaming and going back and forth. I remember one time I was on the road somewhere in the hotel. I'm in my hotel room. I hear this couple out in the hallway fighting and my chest got tight and my anxiety just went up. And I'm a grown man as a couple, but yet again, that trigger is so true.
So it just comes down to understanding what our triggers are and then dealing with them. So now when I have a conversation with Ken, I get quiet and I sit and I wait. And he goes, don't freeze up on me. It's not me freezing up. It's me processing. Because I have to go, okay, I'm feeling that anxiety in my chest. I'm feeling that tightness. I want to say, stop yelling at me, but I know he's not yelling. So I have to process the trigger, which is my history. And I have to find a way to push through that. And I know by being quiet and going, okay, is this something that I'm really upset about with him? Or is this something from my past that's coming back? And once I can answer in a calm way that makes sense.
You've done the work. Okay.
Well, I'm always doing the work.
You're always doing the work.
It's a constant practice.
I find that us guys too, if I ever want, guys, and I apologize just because I want to help and fix, which isn't always the best. You know, if I go, hey, Mike, I've been watching you do this, you should do that, and that's it. And it's like, I'm like coming in, I'm almost surgical, and I neglect the emotions at times. And that's not the right thing to do. I'm just almost rapid fire fix. And if you watch like Shark Tank, that's how they are in Shark Tank, right? It's like, yeah, I don't want your business because of this, or I want to buy you because of that. And we all love watching it as an audience member, but boy, that person that's getting that barrage of comments or critiques, it's tough on them. And I neglect the emotion on the other side. And please, Mark.
So something that I hope you like. Here's the neuroscience between communication. A lot of people will say, I have a partner, and they say, I don't want advice, I don't want solutions, I just want you to listen. And then the person who gives advice says, I am listening. And so here's what's going on in the neuroscience. When people are stressed, our cortisol goes up. When our cortisol goes up, it flits with something in our brain called our amygdala. So cortisol goes up, readies the body, triggers the amygdala. The amygdala then shunts blood to our lower brain to survive away from our upper brain. That's what a deer in the headlights look like. And so here's the issue, is that when someone wants to just be heard out, the counter force for high cortisol is oxytocin. And so when someone wants to be heard out, they want to feel felt, because that increases their oxytocin, lowers their cortisol, their amygdala goes back into its holster, and they can speak reasonably. But when you give them unsolicited advice, you're raising the cortisol, because it feels like you're trying to control them. And then what happens is that they further need oxytocin, and you're making it worse because you're nervous. You're scared that it will escalate. But that's what's going on. That's the whole neuroscience of it, is they need a fix of oxytocin to lower their stress so they can listen to us.
So is the proper response what African Americans have been saying for a while? Did they figure out the solution by saying, do you feel me? And I feel you. Is that the solution?
Wow. I would say this. In a therapy session with my ex-wife years ago, one thing that really stood out from the therapist is that he said that it's important to understand and know each other's dreams and nightmares. And we all have dreams and nightmares. We have things that, the nightmares, like the triggers. Certain things, I think we have to be open to learn those things about each other. So when we do cross that line, or, we know, okay, I crossed that line and can deal with it, but we have to understand and respect each other's dreams and nightmares.
Yeah.
How's it going with you and your ex-wife?
Great now. The ex, definitely helped.
I've been writing a lot about Black Lives Matters and whatever. So Alex, to your point, something that's been happening when some of my black friends will say, like, do you feel me? Do you finally get it? This is like empathy on steroids. What I'll say to them is, I don't get what it's like to be you. And to be honest, I don't think I could handle it. And I'm amazed at what you've been dealing with for so long. And I'm sorry that I've been clueless. It just, wow. Because that's you follow me? That's what they're feeling is I don't, in fact, I discovered I had a covert racist in me because I worked on the O.J. Simpson trial with the prosecution. And then after the verdict came and the not guilty, I went to my black friends and I said, geez, I feel justice is stacked against me. You ever feel that way? And they look at me and they say, that's all I've felt. It's my whole life. I said, it feels so awful. Why didn't you tell me it was so bad? And I'm telling you, to a one, they looked me right in the eye and they said, because you didn't fucking want to know. And they were right. They were right.
That's powerful.
Wow.
I want to show you how to diffuse a situation. So Chris Voss, who's a member of Metal, he wrote the book Never Split the Difference. He's an FBI hostage negotiator, and he's negotiated some of the craziest hostage situations ever. And when he gets on a phone with the perpetrator that's holding the hostages and they're yelling at him, the first thing he says is, you're right. And then he goes, I'm an asshole. I'm a jerk. And literally uses all this negativity, and the person basically says, well, wait a second, it diffuses, it changes that dialogue. So if we go into a hostage situation or a hostile situation, by bringing up all the negative right away, all the negative of how that person perceives you, to where they don't even think about it anymore. It's like, wow, it's already out in the open. It diffuses things right away. You're shaking your head, Mark, yes. Why does this work?
Well, because what you're doing, there's a term called mediated catharsis, meaning you're giving them a catharsis and the words they're feeling that they would be hesitant to say because it would escalate. And when you give them that stuff to express themselves without their having to express it, they get a surge of oxytocin because they don't just feel understood, they feel felt. I mean, you're giving them a burst of oxytocin.
My Metal membership fee for the year has just paid off in a good ROI. Just a mediated catharsis. Mind blown.
By the way, Alex, I just got to tell you, my ex, she has got a lot of pent-up anger at me. And a couple of weeks ago, I had to call her up. And I called her up right away, and I go, hey, I just want to let you know, I have been a dick, an asshole, a horrible person. I can't believe I treated you like this, all these things. And then she goes, oh, you're not that bad. It's like, whoa. And then we started moving forward with some solutions, but it was literally to where I created the worst case scenario, how I believe she sees me. And I said it, and it wasn't even that bad to her. So I'm thinking, Kelly, you got sometimes a situation down there where you have a partner where you have to diffuse a situation. Turn yourself into a monster and visualize in your mind of what she thinks or he thinks you are and say it, and watch how it diffuses it right away.
I'm going to try.
It just blows my mind. I've never had to do it with you. No, not yet.
You know, something you can say, Ken, that's along those lines is, you can say to the other person, I got something that I think will make the situation better. Just humor me. And they look at you suspicious, and you look them straight in the eye and say, could you say this with me if you feel it? Stop being such an asshole. Could you say that? And so you milk it out of them. And I'll tell you, if you have teenagers who won't do their homework, or they won't do stuff, you go in there and you say, I have something that might make this homework situation a little better. What's that? And you say, could you say this to me, honey? Just say it if you feel it. Would you get off my fucking back? Because the last thing I want to do after you talk to me is my homework. I'm going to do video games and go straight to porn, okay? So could you say that to me, honey? And what happens is you're giving them this vocabulary to get everything off their chest. And they feel grateful because teens hate resenting their parents. They just do.
Oh, wow. That is pretty powerful. Hey, Mark, how many books have you written?
7.
And they all focus primarily in what area?
Well, one was called Get Out of Your Own Way, Self-Defeating Behavior. Another one was The 6 Secrets of a Lasting Relationship, which is, I had a formula there that there are 6 pillars in every relationship we have, and it forms the acronym CREATE: chemistry, respect, enjoyment, acceptance, trust, and empathy. And when we fall in love, it's all hard loaded like with a computer, and then we develop glitches. So the whole book is how to have conversations when you develop a glitch in any of those areas.
So the reason I wanted to bring that up, I'm happy you brought that one up specifically. As you find relationships change throughout time, do you think it gets harder to have more sensitive conversations with your partners, or is it easier because of the relationship has grown together and you're more predictive in your natures?
I think it depends. If you are of a forgiving nature, it's easier. If you have an unforgiving streak like one of your parents, it gets worse. And you know what the Gottmans talked about is, do you know what the single greatest predictor of relationships falling apart is? The single emotional thing? Contempt.
Yes, that makes so much sense.
I need help with that. Elaborate on what that means.
Contempt is like hardened anger. You know, and when someone looks at you and they're contemptuous of you, it is like you're looking at stone that you can't chip away. So contempt is like after frustration and anger is really hardened. And it's just tough to be in the room when someone is contemptuous of you.
So makes so much sense.
You felt that with your ex. There have been times, Ken, when you felt that with your ex, when it could be chillingly cold, the contempt.
It's interesting because I see a lot of people that go and date the person they broke up with, and they still hold that contempt with them. So they enter a relationship that's already basically scorned and has no chance of succeeding.
Yep.
I'm going to give you guys the best quote. I collect quotes. Here's the best quote I've ever heard from a woman who started Project Forgive, and it was nominated for Nobel Prize. You're going to want to write this down. Forgiveness is accepting the apology you will never receive.
Oh, jeez.
I did that with my dead father, and I realized in my mind he apologized for something that, you know, he just did out of fear. And then this is 20 years later, and I said, geez, Dad, I want to apologize to you for holding a grudge.
You repeat that one more time so I'll make sure I put it down.
Forgiveness is accepting the apology you will never receive.
Damn.
And so I did that, as I said, with my dead father, who, you know, and I put myself in his shoes about something when he was critical, and I realized he was critical because he was afraid. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, he apologized. You know, when I was critical of you, I was always critical because I like to live in the box and you were living outside the box. And a lot of people who live outside the box fall through the cracks. And I'm really proud of what's happened to you. You've made it outside the box. And I'm sorry that I was so critical. And I imagined him saying that to me. I'm telling you, I got emotional. I said, well, you know, I'm supposed to understand this shit. And I'm sorry for having had a chip on my shoulder. And I still occasionally bring you up as an excuse. And I'm sorry it turned out to be that way.
Jason just asked, where's that quote from?
Thank you, Chris. If you go to, I think, Shani Duperon, SHAWNEDUPERON, and she had something called Project Forgive.
God, that takes a strong person to actually do that, because what you're saying is, I'm going to accept an apology. Maybe they don't even mean to apologize.
Well, you're doing it for yourself.
Right,
you're doing it to let go of your anger.
It's kind of like borrowing money. You know, you should never lend any money that you're looking to get back.
Mm-hmm. You lend it as a gift.
Yeah.
I think you touched on forgiveness before in different conversations, though. Forgiveness is what's going to heal you in so many different ways. Because if you have unforgiveness, there is no way you're going to be able to move on. You can think you're going to move on, but that stuff is going to lay dormant. And when something triggers, it's going to rise back up. So if you do not have forgiveness, you will not be able to have a successful relationship with anyone. And I may not be a writer, but I am someone who's experienced this life, and I've seen a lot of it happen. But forgiveness is going to release you and relieve you. I've had to forgive a lot of people, and a lot of them are dead. Yeah. But if I didn't do that forgiveness, I wouldn't be where I am today.
But it's not just forgiveness, it's true forgiveness. It's that feeling of release that you have to allow happen in your heart. Because we can say, oh, I forgive you, but if you don't actually feel it, if you haven't allowed it to release, you'll feel that pain later on when you're triggered.
And that's a process too. That true forgiveness is a really deep process, because when I had to purge out and do that, it took me 2 weeks, 15-minute intervals, when I actually thought I was going to have a heart attack, and my chest actually hurt. My insides hurt after, like I was beaten up, because there's a lot of pain.
Yeah. What are you going to say, Joseph? Joseph, you want to say something?
Yeah, these are fantastic words, and I really appreciate everything everyone's been saying. My mother once said, she said, you know, when you hurt a child, they don't hate you, they end up hating themselves more. And we are just little kids inside of us. And then she continues to say, but to hear an adult is the same as holding a child. As grown-ups, we want to be heard. We want to be understood. And too many times, I think we seek to make ourselves understood rather than try to understand first. And I coined a phrase, you know, several years ago that said, if you want to change your world, change your perspective and your world will change. And I think if you can get to that point where you can try to see somebody else's perspective, you say when that you know, everything heightens up in the argument, and you're there, and nobody wants to be there, nobody planned on getting to that point, but you find yourself there, take that step back and really look, say, try to understand, look, listen, hold the adults, hold them tight by really hearing them, and then echoing back, you know, repeating back to them, reflecting to them what it is they said, so that either you can properly understand if you've misunderstood what they've been saying, and if not, then you know, then they get validated that you actually have heard what they're saying. You don't need to come up with a solution. Just hear the adult, hear them, and then they felt like they've been held.
You have 3 kids, right, Joseph?
I have 3 kids, yeah.
You have 3 kids. Do you consciously always think that when you're getting frustrated or you have an issue with them? Do you think about that?
Too frequently. They remind me that too much, because you know, I see, you know, one of them, you know, he's got physical health problems, and you know, and so consciously he's very aware of his surroundings constantly, because he's got to be. It's funny, COVID is kind of like just everybody else started living our lives. He's got cystic fibrosis, so we're constantly protecting his lungs and constantly having to help him breathe. And so he's aware of his surroundings the whole time. But and anytime that he feels berated of something, he'll all of a sudden, you know, he'll go in and say, "Oh, I'm such an idiot," and he reflects it straight back onto himself. And so constantly we're being given that reminder. And funny enough, my wife does the same thing. The moment that there's any kind of problem, I say, "Oh, you know, my keys were here," and she'll just go and say, "Oh, it's so stupid of me to have moved them." And it's like, no, it's not an issue. But then it's trying to understand, trying to say, hey, look, are you hating yourself? My objective isn't to make you hate yourself.
That's powerful.
And so, yeah, they remind me of that constantly.
So but you reprogrammed yourself from the way your parents treated you, because you've been conscious of this.
I think so. My mum's also a psychotherapist. And she became a psychotherapist later in life. You know, she started in her 40s. She got her doctorate when she was 71. She's still practicing full-time in London now in Harley Street, which is, you know, the most prestigious medical center in London. But and she works full-time, and she's constantly giving me these pointers, or just, you know, without breaking any confidences, just passing these little precious gems of information on, and it really does help.
So, Mark, I want to ask you now. We're going through this interesting time of communication in our country, actually in the world. What advice can you give to all of us on how we can talk about a topic that is sensitive, it's emotional, it's personal, and it's important to be heard? How do we start that dialogue so we maintain communication with the person on the other side and they don't just walk away?
Well, to build on what we've been saying, and you should try this, one of the best ways to free your mind is to give an unsolicited apology to people. To ask yourself, who have I been wrong to? and then find a way, and even to contact them even years later. And why that's so amazing, getting back to the oxytocin, there are many people in the world who have never received and will never receive an unsolicited apology. Mm-hmm. And the more that you can reach out to people, in fact, I wrote a blog about, you know, how do we make Black Lives Matter? I think I wrote something, keeping Black Lives mattering. And I said, if you're a white person, reach out to any Black person you know and say, have you ever felt discriminated against, profiled, abused? Look them in the eye, and many of them will say, that's all I felt. And then if you say, tell me about the worst incident. And then when they tell you that, say that to them. And then if you have the guts, look them in the eye and say, we're friends. It's so bad. Why didn't you tell me it was so bad? And a number of them are going to say, because you didn't want to know. And it's amazing how that can transform things. And that's how we can keep it going. And that's what the blog was about. Reach out to Black people and ask them those 3 questions. Have you ever felt discriminated against? How bad did it get for you? Why didn't you tell me it was so bad? And then when they look at you, see the pain underneath the anger. When they say you didn't want to know.
So do me a favor, now turn that not just for Black Lives Matter, but if we have to talk to our significant other or to our child or to a parent, how do we start these? Is there 3 steps to go in that direction?
Okay, so here's a huge step. You say to your significant other, and you set it up this way. You say, when would be a good time to get your undivided attention? And it's not divorce, it's not cancer, it's not whatever, but it's something I wanted to get off my chest, you know, you an apology for. And so you'll get their undivided attention, and then you say to them, at my absolute worst, how badly am I capable of making you feel about yourself, about us? And have you ever gotten to the point where you felt being with me was the biggest mistake you've ever made and you're trapped?
Wow.
You say that, they're going to start crying because you're inviting them to fully get stuff off that they felt they could never say. And if they say it, they're likely to tear up. And this can be woman to man too. They're likely to tear up with relief. And if you care about them, I don't care if you're on the spectrum, if you care about them, you look in their eyes and you say, you deserve better. I was wrong. I'm going to fix this.
Awesome.
Does that make any sense, guys?
That worked.
So I got to go run. This was great.
Wait, 1 minute. I just want
really
to
fast. What was the book that had the CREATE acronym that you wrote?
It's called The 6 Secrets of a Lasting Relationship, How to Fall in Love Again and Stay There.
Okay, all I want is everyone to unmute their mics, and I'm going to go each one of you, and all I want you to do is this. What emotion are you feeling right now?
What's the what?
What one word emotion are you feeling right now? So Alex, you're first.
Euphoria. I've connected back to my...
No, one word. Christopher.
Motivated.
Jason.
Hopeful.
Mark.
Grateful to you, Ken, because you never hear me out.
One word. Alan.
Actualized.
Jack.
Thankful.
Joette.
Exhilarated.
Joseph.
Relief.
Kelly.
Conflicted.
What was that one?
Conflicted.
Conflicted. Wow. Ron.
Hopeful.
Is it Tuban? Talani.
Helpful.
What was it?
Hopeful.
Hopeful. Eddie?
Gratitude.
Say that again.
Gratitude. Grateful.
Gratitude. Mike? Mike Brown, you have to unmute.
I would say hopeful also.
Got it. Michael?
Empathetic.
Empathetic. Did I get everybody? Jason?
Yeah, hopeful. That was
Kelly?
Kelly.
Sandy?
Love.
Love?
Ken.
Motivated. Motivated. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us. Thank Christopher. We got Christopher, right? Everyone, thank you so much, and we'll see you all later. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.